Boker Tov. Okay. I have to say that I am excited because we're going to be learning Sforno, and I love the Sforno. So when I looked at my list of who I plan to teach at which point, and I turned the page and says, "Oh, Sforno, Tsipi." So I'm just sharing that with you. But I hope you'll also be excited afterwards, and not just me. Beseda. So. 2 words, well, it's a little bit more than 2 words, a background about the new commentator we're going to be learning today. And then we're going to move into the parasha. Okay? So if we're looking at this map, which I try to remember to send to you before we move from one center to another, okay? We have been in, where were we till now?
France.
We started in France, right?
Italy.
We started in France, northern France. And then we moved to Spain, right? And then we went to Provence, right? Last week we were in Provence. Who did we learn last week? Who can remember? Ralbag. We're gonna have a Brishat Shalom from Ralbag today, okay? And now we're moving to a different place and a different time period. We're moving to Italy. We're moving to Italy, and we're moving to the Renaissance. So finally, when we say Renaissance man, we can actually mean a Renaissance man. So it's very nice. Okay, so that this is our map. We're okay now. So you didn't have to have it. I would like you to have it eventually, and on the map. Fantastic. I just want to point out that on your map, okay, this map is a map that my professor made, Professor Jacobs, and he gave me permission to use it. We're moving out of this time frame, because his map only gets to the end of the Middle Ages. And when we talk about the Renaissance, we're already stepping over to a new time. So, we're in the Italian Renaissance.
That I didn't get, okay.
Okay, we're talking about the Italian Renaissance, which is like early in this whole Renaissance thing. But, so, you're not going to see it meant that you've got markers here for all the different types of things. And the second sheet here gives a short explanation of the what we've been doing basically in class, a little bit less briefly, the different types of commentary that were written in the different centers of commentary. But you won't find the Renaissance already on this map, but it's still the same map. So, okay. So, a word about the Jewish community in Italy. So the Jewish community in Italy is one of the oldest Jewish communities outside of Israel, and it traces its origins to before the destruction of the temple. In fact, they are so old that they carry, or at least some of them, carry traditions that are pre-destruction. So they have the filot a little bit different, right? Anybody been to Italy, right? Okay.
Yes.
So you have the Romanutim, right? There are very few Romanutim left. Hitler, Yimach Shmo, took care of that. So just giving you a bit of a background, there's a kavod. The Italians have a very big kavod about being Italian. We are flying forward to the Renaissance time. What does Renaissance mean?
Rebirth.
A rebirth. So we're reaching a point in time where the scholars and the philosophers, not only the Jewish ones, have an idea in their mind that they are saying what we have just experienced is darkness. No learning, no advancement. If we look back at human history and we seek that point in time where there was light and learning and growth and art and poetry and theater and dance, when do we get to?
The Renaissance.
If we're going back, it's not the Renaissance yet.
Greek.
We get to
Roman.
Greek and Roman times. Those are times of enlightenment. We need to rekindle this type of a culture. We need to go back to this type of a rebirth. And we're going to create a Renaissance. Hence, the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages are those ages between those two times of greatness. and the Middle Ages are the Dark Ages, right? So the naming, what?
I think there's two periods, there's Dark Ages and then they went into the Middle Ages, and whatever.
Whatever, יכול להיות.
You would think that they would have had contact because, maybe not, at the time that the Crusades were happening, those who went to the Middle East, I mean, the Arab age
They
too
were
was
very ethnocentric, like culture,
Well, they
whatever
didn't-
they
they
would sort their world, the Christian world,
also,
they are looking at their world and not at the Muslim world. But within their world, within their Christian world, they are seeking a rebirth, something new. And why am I saying this? Because it means that when you are looking for your model of greatness, you have to look back in history. So the older something is, the greater it is, the more important it is, the more significant it is. And therefore, anybody, you want to know Greek, Latin, you want to go back to Aristotle, you want to go back to all these type of things that are going to enable you to recreate that type of a thing. And what happens is that, starting with Italy, parts of Europe have an unbelievable revival. We have art and science and music and poetry and rhetoric, and it's a completely different ball game than what we've had until now in the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, or at least what we today are able to discern from what history has sort of brought down to us. But that's a whole different discussion about the politics of history. Okay, and our new image of the Chacham or the scholar is very different from the old image of the Christian scholar, who is very narrow, more narrow-minded. We've now got what we call the Ish Eshkolot, who is truly a man of the Renaissance. For a change, from not saying that it doesn't fit, this is exactly what it fits. So what about the Jews at the time of the Renaissance? So like everything else, it's a little bit complicated. The Jewish people were mostly residing before the Renaissance in the southern part of the boot, lower down. But because of all different political and bitachon, security, right, and war reasons. How could I not know that, right? Right. The Jewish communities were forced to immigrate upward to the north of Italy, where there weren't previously Jewish communities. And one of the things that happened to the Jewish communities as they traveled from the south to the north is that they broke up. Because while they were big communities in Rome, all those places down there, when they got to the north, they could not accept permission from the towns to reside as a community, but individuals received permission because of their financial capabilities. So instead of having a big community, you have small towns far away from each other, and each one, 6, 7, 8, not even 1 million of Jewish people. So just think to yourself, you can't even have davening on Shabbos. There isn't 1 million. You can't create 1 million. You're talking about not being able to create 1 million. It means that what happened to Jewish education, right? So if you have the parents that come up, so they might still be learned, but this level of knowledge is very, very quickly going to decline. So what we have is, what's formed now is a lot of small semi-communities. And each one of those semi-communities is often not even made up of people that are organic. But it could be some people from Germany that ended up there, some people from Italian Jews, Roman Jews, like everything all mixed together. So even as a community, they don't have 100% common language. They have a lot of common language compared to the Christians. But when it comes to the nosach of the tefillah and the language, the minhagim, it's not so simple. So to a certain extent, the Jews on a religious level are experiencing a weakening of knowledge and a weakening of community, which is always a very dangerous place to be in. Simultaneously, the Jewish people are discovering that they have more and more ability to integrate into this new forming society. And we see the Jews some, not all of course, climb into very prominent cultural positions, like Saloma de Rossi, right? Or you have Yehuda Abarbanel, not Yitzchak, Yehuda, his son Abarbanel. I've got a whole list of all people in literature, in art,
Music.
in music, like Saloma de Rossi. Right, de Rossi is an ancient Italian name. It shows you like from the original founders. Dance, theater, right? Some of the books that were written by Jews at this point in time are still studied in school in Italy, right? This is 500 years later.
If the communities would not have broken up, I mean, there's no way to know, but I'm wondering if because they broke up, they had more exposure to what was around them?
I don't think so,
No.
because Italy was always different. In Italy, you always had this, like this mixing in was always a little bit bigger than in other places. It's a very different type of community in Italy, and also today Italian Jewry is different. And please God, when we reach like a few hundred years from now, we talk about modernity, we'll see that the first place to be affected is in Italy. We start seeing the responses, okay, and not in a defensive way, but in an embracing way. Simultaneously, as I mentioned to you, whatever the older it is, the more important it is. The Jews find themselves as the bearer of treasure, because they have Hebrew, which is the ancient language, and they can learn Torah, which is the original Bible, right? Not translated through the Greek into the Latin, or from the Latin, not translated into all different things until you get the final product. They've got the original. And we discover amazing phenomena, right, of Christian scholars coming to rabbis in order to learn Hebrew, right? This whole movement is called Hebraism, right? You can look it up, Hebraists. All the very important scholars at this point in time went and learned with rabbis. And they're learning Torah and Hebrew and Gemara and Kabbalah, you name it, right? Now, before you get really excited, I'm just gonna calm everything down. They're not giving validity to Judaism. They are looking for validity of Christianity in the Hebrew texts, okay? So don't think that the Jews are gonna start being better off in that sense of being accepted. That's not about to happen, right? But nevertheless, this interaction between Jewish religious scholars and Christian scholars becomes much more common. And when you teach, you also learn, right? So there's an integration of knowledge that's taking place over here, which is very good, but also very dangerous if we're talking about a community that has become weakened.
And also assimilation, because they're together more.
So what's interesting is that there really isn't so much assimilation at this point in time,
What
because they are separate.
What century are we talking
We're
about?
talking about the
15th,
late
16th.
late 1400s, okay?
That's the 15th
1500
century.
into, yeah.
16th century.
Because
Yeah,
I
and
thought that the Jews became very strong in economics, and
They
I
also,
don't
they
know.
have a place in
So that
economics as well.
Some of the towns, they asked the towns after a while, listen, we need a minion, and they were so needed in the economics, but maybe that's
Yeah.
further
So
along.
that's, it's,
And
of
the
course
ghetto,
it's
when did the
developing,
ghetto
and it
come in?
depends who you are, and it depends who owns the village, and there's the Pope states, and it's like much more complicated, but I'm trying just to get this phono. So I just want you to have a picture of what's going on. So we have here a Jewish community, which has a tremendous amount of exposure to this budding new culture, but don't think that everybody's a Renaissance person, right? Okay, but this is a culture that's out there. And we have an integration of ideas from the Renaissance that are entering into the Jewish community, which is not so strong, really, to be able to deal with some of these ideas. So for instance, we see that if you look at the Shilas, that the rabbis get. It's always very interesting to see what shilas the rabbis get. So we have shilas like, can we have mixed dancing at shul? Part of the dafnik. Can we have what's it called? When you put on the masks, not a festival. Maybe it's called a festival, a carnival, but I don't know what it's called. No,
Mardi
that's-
Gras?
No, but that's the wrong country. But you know what I mean, right? They have also now, they still have in Italy, they've got this like big thing that everyone wears masks and
But
costumes.
it's like some kind of carnival.
It's a type of a carnival type of a thing. I forgot what it's called.
That's when we got all the costumes for porn.
Yes, right. The
That's where it started.
so the problem with these mask things is that the reason people wear masks is so that they could behave in essentially an immoral way. Okay, so I'm just putting it that these parties were not were rated R plus. Okay, so but if you have here the Jewish community asking if they can have not the same thing but the same idea, you understand that it's not that there's society has and the question of should or shouldn't there be an organ in the shul, right? All these questions, they're being it's as part of the exposure to what's going on around them. Now, how does all this? How do we encounter all this? We're talking about commentary, right? One of the problems is that there's a tremendous amount of emphasis placed on rhetoric, on structure, on beautiful writing, right? Things have to be structured correctly. It has to flow, but you have like your rules of how to write, right? And you look at the Torah, let's say Parashat Mishpatim, and you're like, it's like a ping pong game, right? You're going from one thing to the other. What's the idea? What's being developed here? Where is it going? Wait, one went to here, one went to the right. You go through the whole of the Torah, and you look and you say, is this like so great? This doesn't fit my ideals of what greatness is supposed to be, great rhetoric is, right? And that really like makes you think a little bit less. And then you get some of the values and ideas that are floating out there, and you look at the Torah and you say, doesn't work, right? And we have all of this like a clash between the way that people are learning Torah at this point and the cultural, theological, not theological as in religious, but like cultural theology that they're being encountered with. This is the background, okay, to Rabbi Ovadia Sforno. So Rabbi Ovadia Sforno was born in Sena, and you have a map. This is on your sheet. Look on the top. I made a star. You can see where the Rabbi Ovadia Sforno was born. About 1470, 1475, משהו כזה. The beginning of his studies were under his father, who was probably a Talmid Chacham, and then he moved to Rome. Okay, you can see Rome all the way down south, go down south to Rome, where he learned philosophy, medicine, math, grammar, languages. Okay, but what's the word we're supposed to say? Eish Eshkolot, a Renaissance man, right? A person of the times. However, he had difficulty working as a doctor because of different anti-Jewish laws, and instead, what did he do? He taught Judaism, Hebraist, like Jonas Reichlin. I don't know if you've heard of that name.
Who?
Jonas Reichlin. You can look
Oh,
him up.
Zeitlin, sure.
No, Reichlin, not
Right.
Zeitlin. Zeitlin is someone else.
Yes.
Okay. Martin Luther was influenced by Jonas Reichlin, and Jonas Reichlin learned his ideas from Thomas, which is very interesting. We'll talk about that in a moment. He left Rome in 1525 together with all the other Jews. That is following the sack of Rome. There was a big war. And he started moving up together with all the other Jews, moving up northward, traveling between small community and small community, looking for a place to live, looking for a place to teach, looking for a place to work. Rabbi Ovadia Sforno had a brother whose name was Hananel. Hananel was a rabbi in Bologna. And he writes to his brother, and he tells him how difficult things are and how much he misses his children. His children were being raised by Rabbeinu Hananel. I don't know if that, by his brother Hananel. I don't know if it's because he had lost his wife or because he had no home and no place, he couldn't look after them. And he also talked about his sadness that he wrote all these books and he can't print them. And eventually, even though he was all the time supported financially by his brother, he eventually lands up in Bologna, where his brother lives. And he works with his brother in their printing shop. They've got a printing shop, like any Jew at this point in time. Like printing is like very, very important in Italy at the moment. And he works also as their community rabbi, a banker, and it is possible, we're not 100% sure how to read the documentation, but it is very possible also that he started yeshiva for doctors. It's an interesting concept, like if you're a doctor, yeshiva for doctors. But he was a doctor, right? And it seems that he started yeshiva. We'll get back to that yeshiva in one moment. One of the things that's very interesting is the Sforno writes introductions before each book that he writes his commentary on. And what we glean from the commentary is this exchange of letters that he has with his brother, where his brother encourages him to write a book, to write the commentary down. And we stop and we ask ourselves a question: why would his brother ask him to write a commentary? If the brother has questions, brother says there are things that are difficult in the parasha, write a commentary. You've got a brother, you sit around the Shabbos table, make a chavruta twice a week, right? Why write a commentary?
For everybody else.
For everybody else. Now that we have here this combination of a brother who is a rabbi of a community, who recognizes the difficulties that the community has. They can't integrate the outside world with their inner spiritual world. They need someone to make a bridge, to bridge this gap, to help them see the Torah in the light that it needs to be seen in. Not in the old light that they somehow think that it needs to be seen, but to show them that the Torah is a wonderful thing and it's a great thing and they've got what to learn from it. And indeed, that is what it's also Ovadia, but it's a different Ovadia a few hundred years before. Rabbi Ovadia Sforno does. He writes a commentary to address the difficulties of his generation. So it's very, very interesting because you can see in the commentary like the mirroring of the difficulties that the people that have. The difficulties that the Jews have at this point in time are much greater than they had in the Middle Ages. Because in the Middle Ages, it was very clear, you were Jewish, and the Goyim were illiterate. They were illiterate, drunkards, that was for most people in the Christian world. The Goyim weren't knowledgeable. There wasn't something that you looked up to. But now all of a sudden, the Goyim are not what they used to be yesterday. They're literate, they're knowledgeable, science, art, all these other things. And you're all of a sudden looking and saying like, yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're right. And don't forget, the Christians are all the time putting pressure on you to convert, right? So it's not just a in your mind type of an idea.
Did they already have the commentary of Ibn Ezra? Because it sounds very
Yeah. But the Ibn Ezra is a different time. But the Ibn Ezra is a very grammatically based commentary. And that's not where they are. They're not in the grammar bit.
No.
They're on the art, culture, science, rhetoric. That's what they're looking for in the Torah. And here comes the Sforno, who is a scientist and a mathematician and a doctor, and a banshan, like a language specialist, and he writes a commentary that addresses all of these difficulties for the people so they can learn Torah and become elevated by this experience and feel I'm on par with you, right? I'm even better. I'm not like missing out because I've got something which belongs in the darkness of the Middle Ages, right?
Right.
No, I've got the Torah. So, and this is how the commentary was born. His brother encouraged him. His brother financed him, and they worked as a team. And he wrote the commentary, printed it in their printing, and this commentary became one of the most prominent commentaries in Italy. It's a beautiful commentary. It's beautiful because it's straightforward, it's clear, it's not overwinded. It has insight into characters, into people, into situations, psychology, medicine, science, all different things. It really is a very, very nice commentary. So we have, right, Pirush Sforno ala Torah, right, which you can find in many mikrot gdolot, right, or on the shelf, right, and this has always been the commentary of Sforno on the Torah. About maybe 30 years ago, somebody was going through old books, I don't know if it was a doctoral student looking for a thesis, I'm not sure what it was, but that type of a thing. And they found an inculabula. Okay, I want you to look on your page with the map. Underneath that map, there is an inculabula. Who remembers what the word inculabula? No, in this picture. Here. Who remembers what an inculabula is?
It's one of the first books that was ever printed.
Very good. Yofi. One of the first books printed. Okay, I want you just to look at this inculabula and tell me who wrote it. Who wrote this text?
It's very unclear, I can't see anything.
Not at the sides, just in the middle, the big print. You just need to look at the big words to know who wrote it.
Can't see the big ones are small.
Tohalot. Who wrote this? It's the Ralbag. Do you remember we learned the Ralbag last week, right? The Ralbag writes the commentary on the Torah in 3 rounds, right? First the words, then the story, and then, okay, ma hato'alot, what do I gain from having learned this? So when you see this talot, you know this is the Ralbag. There's nobody else that's writes like this. So here's an inculabula, okay, of the Ralbag with very wide margins. And in these wide margins, it's a bad photocopy. Very clear writing. You can see, even though it's, you can see how accurate, exact the lines are, the words are the same. Like you can see that it's very nice writing, even though it's a bad photocopy. There's summaries, and 800 pages of Ralbag. There are these long summaries. For years, nobody bothered actually looking at this because it's, who's got koach to decipher handwriting? Okay, this is written in Italian Jewish writing. Okay, which is not exactly the same as our handwriting. You have to actually know Italian Jewish writing. It's possible to decipher, but it does require, it's like when you just learn Rashi, right? It's not Rashi print, but like that feeling when you just learn Rashi print and you can work it out, but you have to decipher the words and then read it again because you lost the first word by the time you got to the end of the sentence. So that type of a feeling, unless you actually verse it in this writing. People just assumed, it's like a summary commentary on the Ralbag. Until somebody sat and read and said, no, it's not. This isn't the Ralbag at all. This looks very much like Sforno. They look at this thing, they look at this, and they look at the printed version of Sforno, right? That Sforno and his brother edited and brought to print, right? They wrote it. We know that it's accurate because it's theirs, right? And they printed it. Say, there's a lot of similar ideas. Very much. אבל זה לא אותו דבר. It's not the same thing. And it turns out that on the middle of the week, Ms. Sforno gave a parsha class in the Bet Midrash. And somebody sat in on the shurim and he took notes. What did he write the notes on? In the margins of the inculabula of the Ralbag. Because you anyways have the book. And paper's very expensive, right? And we're gonna have space for 2 books on your shelf. Here you've got a book with lots of space. Let's just add another commentary on the side. And he summarizes all of the shurim that he heard from the Sforno. It's amazing. He writes, and like he starts always whenever the Sforno says something, he writes Amar HaGaon. Amar HaGaon. That's how he introduces the ideas that the Sforno brings in. So about when somebody realized this, about 30 years ago or something, I think it's Cooperman, the Michlala in Yerushalayim. He was a very big Rambam Sforno scholar. And what he did is he published it, deciphered it, fixed it up, and published it. And you can, if you go to the library, on the shelf with, you go down the commentary and you get to Perush Sforno, and then you get right after it, you'll find a few volumes that say Amar HaGaon. That's what they call the volumes of the shiurim that the Sforno gave. It's very interesting. So the Amar HaGaon and the Chamisha Chumshei Torah and the Megillot and Tehillim. Yeah. I don't remember. There's another one. Okay, so you can go find it on the shelf. What?
Not on Nevi'im.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. You have to go look on the bookshelf. So it's an amazing thing, right? So if you ever had a question, why should you be taking notes? Not in my class, but in somebody else's class. You never know. A few hundred years from now, somebody might say, "Oh, look," and publish it and give people insight. Okay, so it's very interesting to see. Is although it's so clear, it's the same commentator. It's not the same. It's not the same, and it's very important because when you are sitting in class and you are teaching people that come every week, you know who your audience is, right? And you work together on the ideas and you develop the ideas with them, and you see what they're capable of understanding, what they have the background for, they don't have the background for. You can say some things, but when you're writing a commentary that's being printed and just sent out into the far reaches of, you don't know who's going to read it, who's going to get it, you choose very carefully how you present the ideas so you know that anybody will be able to understand them and not be misunderstood. And you decide on what are the ideas that you want to focus on, which might be different from the ideas that you're focusing, right? Because of what happened this morning in the supermarket. Well, they have a supermarket, right? Or the news that's coming from France, right? Which might affect what you're deciding to focus on a little bit differently. So this is a little bit background on Sforno. He died 1750, משהו כזה.
No, 16.
1550.
No, 1549.
1550. He was born 1475 and died about 1550 in also in Bologna. What? No, not that.
In Bologna. Okay.
Yes. Very, very important scholar with a tremendous amount of impact on Torah scholarship in Italy. Like if you look at the books that people had, right? We had Chumash and the Siddur, Rashi, and the next in line is Sforno. Okay? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our parasha. Okay. So, in our discussion today about the parasha, we are going to talk about the parasha, but we are not going to talk about the perush of Sforno and the parasha, not the first or the second. Oh, that is Sforno's house. Thank you. That is Sforno's house. Still stands today in Bologna. On the bottom floor, which I didn't have in the picture, although did I? I don't remember. There was a changing house that he worked in, like a bank changing house, a Jew, right? So this is. I think it's just cool that you can see where he lived. No.
Where is it?
Bologna. Now one of the plaza. I don't remember, but you can look it up. We know.
I just just looked it up now that the ghetto in Venice was in 1516. So there was already that type of movement in his life, but maybe, but on the
It's
other
different.
hand,
Venice is different.
Venice is different if you go to like Livorno or other places, it wasn't, but it was already a little seed, I just wanted to. He may not have been dealing with it.
Yes,
Where does
yes
his
and
brother
no.
live?
Yes and no. What?
Bologna.
Where
He's
does his
Bologna.
brother- Both of them live in,
Yeah, he lived with his brother. Not with, but like he
Yeah,
moved
yeah,
to Bologna
okay.
with where his brother was. It's a little more complicated.
It
Venice,
is
Venice,
complicated,
Venice,
I know
and
this.
no, I'm talking about the ghetto in Venice. It's a little bit different than other ghettos.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So, so let me start by asking you a question, okay? We've moved into Vayikra, which I think makes some people a little bit nervous, right? It's who wants all these sacrifices which don't mean anything and we don't understand them and all that stuff. But I think that hopefully with Avatis phone we'll feel a little bit, at least we'll have a very different view in Korbanot than we did before. What types of Korbanot are there? Let's see, what can you think of? Asham, Ola, Chatat, Mincha. One more. What? We had Chatat. I think we had Chatat. If we
Yes,
didn't, we
we
should
did.
have. Okay, Chatat and Shlamim. I know it's hard to keep them in mind.
Shlamim.
Shlamim.
Okay.
Shlamim. Okay. If we take these 5 types of korbanos and we try to categorically divide them into groups, what groups can we divide it into?
What you bring for the korban, does that?
So one option, of course, is what you bring, right?
If you knew ahead
The
of
time of when you bring it.
Okay. So let me read you the one sentence that we have from the comment that we're bringing for the commentary of Rabbi Ovadia Sfon on the Torah. This is not from the commentary, but from the Sikumim, from Amar HaGaon. Okay?
Okay.
This doesn't appear in if you open the Chumash you won't find it, but if you open Amar HaGaon you will find it. Uminei HaKorban em chamisha. It's not on your page, but it's only one line. Chatat, Ola, Shlamim, Mincha, ve'asham. Shlosha, ba'im nedava.
Mm-hmm.
Hainu. Anybody know which ones are nedava?
Voluntary, no.
Ola, Mincha, and Shlamim. והשניים האחרים הם חטאות והאשמות, אינם באים מעולם נדבה כי אם חובה. Right? So if we look at the types of sacrifices, but we have 2 categories of sacrifices. The ones you give because I want to say thank you, or I want to give gratitude, or I want to come closer to God, right? It's nedava. A nedava is
Voluntary.
a voluntary, like something that I'm giving, that I'm
From
doing
my
for my own volition. I want to do it, right? And then we have the other type, which is chovah, right? No one asked you if you want to bring it, right? You did something wrong, and to atone for it, this is the process. You have to bring a korban, and that's chatat, right? Chet, and asham, right? Ashma, right?
Mhm.
So these 2 sacrifices are the sacrifices of the that are chovah. Now, what's very interesting is if we look at the commentary of the Sforno to, like, let's say our parasha, there's very, very little commentary. At the beginning, there's an explanation what the korban is, like a paragraph, and then nothing, right? New korban, a few words. Like, he doesn't really give the sacrifices much attention. And we wonder what, the Sforno didn't think that sacrifices needed attention? I mean, if I think of anything, he's trying to address people's difficulties, it sounds like this is it, right? This is something you definitely have to talk about. And the reason is because of another book that he wrote. So I mentioned, perhaps I didn't mention strongly enough, that Sforno was a philosopher. Now, he was a philosopher not just Jewish philosophy, but general philosophy. He wrote a book called Or Amim. I don't know how to say that in Italian or in Latin. He wrote the book in Latin.
Or Ami.
Or Amim, Light of the Nations, where he confronts old like Aristotelian philosophy, etc. This book he wrote also sent a copy. It's not written in Hebrew, right? He also translated into Hebrew, right? He sent a copy to the King of France. Okay, so just think he had contact with the King of France, that the King of France was happy to get this copy of a book from him. King Enrico II, right? So he was a very known philosopher. By the way, if you look up the Center for Study of Sforno in Germany, there is a not Jewish center where they study his philosophical works, like in the university. Every year they've got a conference. So he's like out there. But he wasn't only a secular philosopher, he was also a Jewish philosopher. And he wrote a book called Kavanot HaTorah, The Intentions of the Torah. This book was meant as like a sort of introduction before his commentary to the Torah. It got sort of edited out of the, ended up as his own copy. And like the Rambam, when you, on your own, you sort of fall out of the limelight, right? But in this book, he explains what's the purpose of the Torah? What is the Torah's goal? What is it trying to teach us? What's the connection between the Tselem Elokim and the Tselem of the Adam? What is the connection of the Torah and the study and the Maaseh between what is man's purpose in life, how we're supposed to understand the historical development of humanity, the historical development of the Jewish people, what is the effect of our choices in the world as individuals and as a people, right? This is a heavy philosophical book, but very interesting, right? Because it really touches core issues. And it's mamash a philosophical book. Like, you know, you have to read it. Okay, wait, let's read it again, see that I got what he's trying to say. When Sforno wrote his commentary, he meant the commentary to be for everyone. So he didn't want to put into the commentary lots of deep philosophical discussions. Although if you read the commentary, you can piece together his philosophy, but it is not a philosophical book. Like I said to you before, it reads so smoothly. It's a nice read. So the commentary that I brought for you from the Korbanot is from Kavanot HaTorah, okay, which is the other book that he wrote, where he addresses the topic of sacrifices very, very widely. Now, in order to understand the discussion that he is going to develop in Kavanot HaTorah, I want to ask you two questions, okay? The first is, how do we understand our relationship with Hashem as people and as a nation? Is it static? Is it changing? Is it developing? Is it headed in a certain direction? How do we understand it?
I think it depends from which point of view. If it's from a personal point of view, I think it's probably something that changes all the time, depending on your frame of mind, on what stage of life you are, and all so forth. And from the point of view of the nation, perhaps it's a little more static, but again, dependent on the situation of Bnei Israel at the time, whatever it is.
Okay, so very interesting. Anybody want to have any other ideas, thoughts? So it's interesting, first of all, to stop for a moment and look at our relationship as a relationship, that there could be changes. There's ups, there's downs, right? What did I do today? What didn't I do today, right? Etc. The other question I want to ask you,
Especially during war situations.
let's say, for instance, war situation.
What did you say?
Here, in a war, right? People are trying to get closer to God, right? Right? So we say things that are happening around us could have an effect on how we reach out to God or try to listen to God or etc.
Could you apply that to the nation as well?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
we
that I
just
think.
Okay, so.
I'm raising the question because I want this thought to be in your mind, okay? Don't want to come to any specific conclusions. I just want it to be there in the background of the discussion. And the other question, which is related to that, is how do we understand the system of the mitzvot? Right? We know that in the Midrash says, Histakel be'oraita uvara alma, right? That the world was created according to mitzvot. Right? Or the Torah. Are the mitzvot like a rigid system? Or are the mitzvot a fluid system? Are they something that change? Or we're the ones that are changing and trying to adhere to them? Okay, so I'm leaving this question. We're going to get back to it in a moment because these two questions are at the basis of Sforno's understanding of the korbanot, but much more than that, of our relationship with God and the whole system of mitzvot. According to Sforno, mitzvot are a system that mirror or reflect our relationship with God. In other words, man goes through life doing things, hopefully most of the time building, correcting, but sometimes also causing destruction. Causing destruction, not just breaking houses, right? But also causing spiritual destruction, right? Doing terrible things, right? Somebody murders, or somebody, or a community does something terrible, right? We can do things, think about Tsipi Egert, right? We can do things that are destructive spiritually. How does God respond to us as people when we've done something like that, when we've destroyed? So let you give it for a moment, you can all put on your God cap, right? And you are now given the opportunity to think, how do I respond when man, right, looking up from the heavens at the humanity and like, what? Right? And how will you respond when you see something terrible happen, right? That people did something which was very destructive. What options do you have?
You can walk away.
God? What do you mean that God will walk away?
You don't deal with it, and you don't.
Okay. So, don't disturb me. Okay, that's one option.
Punishment.
Punishment, we're all familiar with punishment, right? What else? Judgment, right? I mean, just that look down and like, that's already judgment, right?
Well, that you bring it to justice, you bring.
You could send someone to help them correct what they're doing.
Or maybe try and give them tools to fix.
Yeah, right. Opportunities for kapara or the next level of
It's
tshuva.
interesting. Either opportunities for kapara, right, to make up for the sin that you've done, or opportunities to grow, to do better, right? Better than what you did before. That, says Sforno, is the system of the mitzvot. The system of mitzvot. When he looks at the development of mitzvah as in God commanding man, from creation, through Adam HaRishon, through Dor Mabul, and afterwards Abraham and the Jewish people, and we're going to continue, right? Says the system of mitzvot is a development that God created in the world through which God tries to give guidance to the Jewish people, or the people at the beginning before they were Jewish people, right? In order to help them correct their mistakes and grow and do what's better. Which is an amazing thought, right? Because we're not focusing on the punishing aspect. We're focusing on the, let's give you the tools that you need in order to do better. Like, I recognize that you've got tremendous potential. but you're having difficulty working out how to use it. Let me give you guidelines. And the more difficulty you have, the more guidelines you need, the more restrictions. Don't go there, right? Right? Little kids are very small, like my grandson just worked out how to open up the break front with all the glass dishes. Right, so now we have to lock it. Right, I didn't lock it a week ago because he didn't know there was a door there. But now he knows there's a door and he opens it up. Wow, right, so now I have to lock it. Right, so you have different restrictions come with different abilities that man has. Okay? Now this is a mind-blowing idea because it means that we're not looking at the body of mitzvot as a static body. I'm not even talking about Chazal, in history that you make adjustments so will fit with electricity, without electricity. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the big system, right? All of a sudden that now the mitzvot you have to do, they didn't exist before. And why do they exist now? Because man sinned and they need a little more guidance because they're not chopping it without. So the body of the mitzvot is something which is developing through history. And if you think, and if we take what you said, right, the ability that God could say, leave me alone, right? This is the exact opposite. Because if we think about hashgacha pratit, right, so we usually think about hashgacha pratit as in, I nearly missed the bus. And hashgacha pratit, right, and I caught it and I didn't miss my plane, whatever, type of thing. This is absolute core hashgacha pratit. Where God didn't only create man and throw him into the universe and say, swim. No, he says, okay, let's see, can you manage? Okay, so I'll throw you this. You manage? No, okay, take this also, right? Okay, let's go. Don't go on this side, right? It's mamash God watching over humanity in order to help humanity grow and achieve his potential. So now we can start talking about korbanot. Okay? This, by the way, is one of the central themes in Sforno's commentary, which is when you read about creation and you read about the sins in Chumash Bereshit, it gives you a completely different perspective on man, on man's potential, and the relationship with God. It's an unbelievable experience. I'm inviting you to read Sforno on Chumash Bereshit. It's very, very, what if we were in a Renaissance class, we would speak about that it is humanist. There's a tremendous amount of faith in man, and man's ability, and man's potential, right? And it's a world that's striving to grow, which is such a nice, uplifting type of a commentary to read. Okay, so we're reading now from Kavanot Torah. Okay? And I'll explain as we go. Let me just make sure that I have... that I'm following with your source sheet, not just my source sheet. Well, that could be a mistake. So you can see that this is a photocopy from a book.
This,
Yes, the big letters. Makes life easy for everybody. ובכן, ראוי להתבונן. כי אמנם קודם חטא העגל, okay, this is from the 6th chapter in כוונות התורה. קודם חטא העגל, תכף אחר מתן תורה, לא היו ישראל צריכים לכל אלה למען השרות שכינתו בתוכם. Sforno is talking about before and after. Before is before חטא העגל, and after is after חטא העגל, right? So what happened right after Matan Torah and just before חטא העגל? So let's think for a moment about Matan Torah. What happened to the Jewish people in Matan Torah?
they were sitting and waiting.
They heard God's voice,
Oh, okay.
right? They heard God with no intermediary. And they understood what he said. This is like level of prophecy. Like who?
Moshe.
Like Moshe Rabbeinu. Who before Moshe Rabbeinu is also able just to talk like this with God? We don't know. Abraham, a lot of the examples we have that he has, he's dreaming, not clear that Abraham had this level of prophecy. Adam HaRishon. Adam HaRishon, mitalech bagan, talking to God, right? He has this, right? Adam HaRishon is the image of the perfect man, right? This is a Renaissance idea also, kind of a thing. He is the perfect man, created in the image of God, and the highest possible spiritual level, right? And this is the ideal of what man can be, except that he sinned, and he was kicked out of Gan Eden, and we've sort of like kept sliding down the mountain after that to a certain extent, right? So Am Yisrael, if we would put this in the language of Sfono, in Ma'amad Har Sinai, the Jewish people went back to that original, highest possible spiritual level that man can attain. Right? So if we want to make a graph, right? So we have Adam HaRishon, perfection, right? And then he sins. And then we've got the Mabul, right? And then we've got, right, we keep going down, Sodom V'Amorah, whatever. Am Yisrael going out of Egypt, slowly going up. Ma'amad Har Sinai. Oh, it's the same. Reached back up, we've reached back up to the level of Adam HaRishon. Wow.
Not for long.
But we're going to talk for a few minutes about that window of time between Ma'amad Har Sinai and Chet HaEgel. Okay? At this window of time, the Jewish people are like Adam HaRishon. If they want to talk to God, לא היו ישראל צריכים לכל אלה, למען השרות שכינתו בתוכם. You didn't need to do anything specific for the Shekhinah to come. You want to talk to God?
They weren't talking to God, Hashem was talking to them.
That is true. But they were on that level. According to the way Sfono sees it, right? Sfono says, right, that he develops this in a different place, that this idea of being able to have a Shayat Shekhinah, right? Any place where people will learn Torah, God is there. You have a chavruta, you've created like a mikdash. So, ולא נצטוו על עשיית משכן וכליו. There was no command on a משכן. וכהניו ומשרתיו, and you didn't need כהנים, you didn't need לוויים, ולא על שום קורבן לחובה, חובה, what's חובה? Obligatory. חובת ציבור, community, או יחיד, כלל. זולתי, when did all this happen? אחרי חטא העגל. And they plummet down, all of a sudden, can't access God. Can't reach it. They've lost it. Now, what's very interesting, when we think about Chet HaEgel, we've asked many questions. Did God forgive them? Who is going to be punished? How are they going to be punished? All these type of questions. Sfono is asking a completely different question. He's saying, when they sinned, what happened to them? How did they change? How did Chet HaEgel affect them as people? How did it affect them and their ability to have a relationship with God? Right? This is a central question. This is what we have to ask. And his answer is that everything that happens afterwards, and we're going to see next week if we have a class, we're going to see more of this. I don't know what's happening.
Class.
So, everything afterwards is a development of God stepping in to give tools to fix it. You broke? Okay. Let me give you tools to try and fix. To try and recreate a scenario where you can have closeness with God. And what do we have to do? We need to make a mishkan. We need to make kohanim, right? You can't do this on your own. We need all these intermediaries and all these other things in the middle, right? Now, anybody who's had any contact with Bible criticism knows that one of the main questions that comes up is korbanot. Were you supposed to have korbanot? Not supposed to have korbanot? And you will hear these psukim from Yirmiyahu, which he brings here. כאומרו יתברך, okay? כי לא דיברתי את אבותיכם ולא ציוויתים ביום הוציאי אותם מארץ מצרים על דברי עולה וזבח. Right? In the book of Yirmiyahu it says, Hashem is saying, I never commanded them to give sacrifices. Right? And if you look in did I give you the full pasuk? Wait, I'll tell you if I did in the square. At the back, all the way at the bottom. Here are the psukim. כי אם את הדבר הזה ציוויתי אותם לאמור, שמעו בקולי והייתי לכם אלוקים, ואתם תהיו לי לעם. והלכתם בכל הדרך אשר אצווה אתכם למען ייטב לכם. What did I ask from you? To listen to me, to do my mitzvot, to follow my mitzvot, and you will be my people. That's all they asked. I never asked for sacrifices, right? That's God angry at the sacrifices, right? Did God ask for sacrifices, or didn't God ask for sacrifices? So what does Phonus say? Nachon, God never asked for sacrifices. But now things changed. After Tsipi Egert, there was no choice. We had to introduce another kind of element to enable a relationship between man and God. And we had to introduce the korbanot. And the korbanot, because of that, if you wanted to have, people gave korbanot olah, people gave voluntary sacrifices that they wanted to come close. You didn't have to. You want to give a present, you can give a present. It's not the same as taxes, right? You all know there's a difference between the two of them, right? So it says if you want to give a present, you can give a mizbach adama, you can do this, but you don't have to. And as it says, right? Shmot kaf kaf aleph, ואמר בכל מקום אשר אזכיר את שמי, any place where you say my name, הוא כל מקום שיקרא באמת בית אלוקים. כי עניין בתי מדרשות וזולתם. Any place where you call out for God, you learn, you sit in chavruta, you have a shir, you reach out to God. What's this verse of the pasuk? Avo elecha uberachticha. I will come and I will bless you. בכל אלה באר תכף אחר מתן תורה. כאומרו, כה תאמר בני ישראל, אתם ראיתם, וכולי. Right? So if we look at this window, right, between Matan Torah and Tsipi Egert, it would be enough to learn, to reach out to God. Call me and I'll be there, right? Literally. When they sin, we need to introduce the system of korbanot. I'm over time, way over time. If you go on reading, you'll see that he describes, he understands the end of Parshat Mishpatim with the Brit HaGanim that we learned about with Ramban and Rashi. We compared the two approaches. Is that man was like normal. They saw God, spoke to God, and they were like regular human beings. This is like a proof of the high spiritual level that they were. He doesn't see it as a sin the way some other people do. Okay? So what did we see today? Okay, so we met Sforno, and we saw his very, very unique way of looking at the relationship between God and man, where God created man with tremendous potential. And when man sins, God doesn't leave him in his sin, but rather maybe punishes him, rebukes him, etc. But he also tailors the system to give him the tools to try and fix what he has broken on a spiritual level, with the faith that man will be able to reach again that height, that perfection of Adam HaRishon, right? And to be a perfect person. And this is true both on an individual level and on a national level. So I'll leave you with this. I hope I've at least tempted you at least a little bit to read more Sforno. Yes?
I just have a question. That Adam HaRishon, if he was, the highest level of kedusha, of closeness to God, and yet he had no formal learning, and Sforno's period, in the period of time of Sforno, man was so involved in all different kinds of knowledge and creativity and so forth. So I was just wondering how if there's any way to put those two things together and,
For Sforno, one of the most important things is man's freedom of choice and responsibility to make choices. And that is what makes Adam Rishon special, is that he can choose. He can choose how he behaves. He can take responsibility. He can take responsibility to lead others in the correct way. So having knowledge is important, but it's not, it's more of an external thing
okay,
than the internal side.
got it.
Part of the responsibility of having choice is that you can make a mistake. And really what's interesting to look, and I don't remember what Sforno says about it, but it's an inbuilt, it's not an inbuilt danger of having choices that you make the wrong choice, but sometimes only when you make the wrong choice
You learn that
do you learn how to grow. So it's not so simple just to say that like you're saying yourself, like perfection without anything, that's like an empty thing. What does that mean? Right? Here's learning, you're missing that. So I'm saying there's a lot of other elements that we have to put into here. And was man meant to sin? It's an interesting question, right? Because if you sin, you have a path of growth. Was man meant to be perfect, or is man meant to achieve perfection? That's two
or strive for it anyway.
to strive, yes, to strive for perfection. Those are two very different models of what our expectations of humanity are, right? We're not talking about being perfect. We're talking about striving.
Right.
Do you feel that that's in Breshit, when you read Breshit, that he's striving? I may have a
In
very
Sforno's
simplistic view.
commentary, there is you definitely see God changing the universe, changing the mitzvot, giving it's different things, right? To give man tools to continue to grow. But you have to read it with Sforno's commentary. Because otherwise what I said now makes absolutely no sense.
No, I understand, I'm trying to understand, but I never got the sense that Adam was given, like training and education, didn't have a mother and a father to guide him, unless he was, like I see him as all over the map.
That's a very good, I'm putting your two comments
Yes,
together. It's the
yes.
same type of a comment, yes. I would have to go and read Kavanot Torah again to see
Right.
how he
would
approaches
say-
that.
because
I think
Moshe's
also,
getting all the chachma, all the, everything is coming to him, 40 days of learning.
so that's also an interesting question, is Mehmet, in a Renaissance view of looking back at perfection, that you could also, the model might be a little bit different. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. I should go into it and take a look. I don't know if I'll have time to do that, even though I think it's a very good question. But if you read the first chapters of Bereshit with Sforno, it's very, very, even though one feels a sense of despair at mankind, like sort of like not getting it, there is something very uplifting in the way Sforno takes these mistakes and God's response, and he focuses on God's care of humanity and tools for helping humanity to grow, to continue to grow and to fix things, which I think is very nice.
So
Anyway.
the Matan Torah also has that. It's not, this is it.
No, this is exactly the thing.
Yeah. Okay, now I see
God
that.
brought them up to Matan Torah. They fell. He doesn't turn away. He says, okay, you're human. Let's see how we have to tweak with the system to give you the tools to start climbing again, to come back up.
In the
So
Midrash,
it's God that's naive, huh?
no, in the
So-
Midrash class that I take with my Roshers, we were doing with Chet Dama Rishon. And it sounded, it depends what Midrash it was, but it sounded like God was all like using a pretext to get him out of Gan Eden so he could,
So that's
he could elope. Otherwise, he's already there.
So
what's
we
the point?
never get Parashat Bereshit at school.
You never get.
No, we never,
No,
no, we start after Sukkot. Because if we did, I would teach, I
Oh, I mean,
would do
I thought
Sfono.
you meant just, you definitely didn't.